There we go.
Okay, thank you for coming tonight. Wow. Happy New Year. Everybody's ready to go, right?
Yeah.
2015, and it's awesome. Glad to see everybody here. I'm Sandy Golding, President of Beaches Watch. For those of you who may not know about Beaches Watch, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan civic organization here at the beach. We're 11 years old now because we were established in January of 2014. So our focus is educating, 2004, sorry. Our focus is on educating and engaging citizens in the issues that come before our local elected officials here at the beach. And so we have these monthly meetings, the first Wednesday of every month. We're glad to see you guys out here and interested in what's going on. And we hope that you'll continue to come to our meetings. We have a good speaker tonight. I have a feeling that's why a lot of you are here. So before we introduce him, let me just make a few announcements. I hope you picked up an agenda when you came in tonight. There are phone numbers and email addresses on the back of the agenda for all of our elected officials here at the beach, including our distinguished guests tonight, as well as our state representative, our school board representative, and our U.S. Congress representative. I'd like to recognize the elected officials that we have here tonight. With Atlantic Beach, we have Commissioner Maria Mark. Where are you, Maria? Oh, there you are. Okay, hiding. Okay. And then with Jacksonville Beach, we have Councilman Bruce Thomason. And then with Neptune Beach, we have Councilman Scott Wiley. Thank you for coming. And then we also have Jackie Smith, who's here with Andrew Crenshaw's office. We're glad you're here. Jackie brought calendars for if anybody would like a calendar to start off the 2015 with. She's got the calendars here at the Beach Watch table. We thank you for bringing those. Also on the agenda, I want to remind everybody that with the start of the new year, we have membership renewal. Our membership in Beaches Watch is $10 for an individual, $15 for a family, and the membership goes from January to December. Regardless of when you join, it's a calendar year membership. And so if you would like to renew your membership or if you'd like to join, we have Eileen Kremsky, who's our membership chair at the table back here. She'll be glad to help you out with that. And also want to let you know about a couple of things that are coming up. Atlantic Beach is having a town hall on the 10th from 10 to noon, and there's information on the agenda about that. It's at the Gail Baker Community Center. And we hope that those of you who live in Atlantic Beach will go to that and be a part of that town hall. Then also Jacksonville Beach is having its 34th Citizens Police Academy, and the deadline for applications is January 12th. It's a great, okay, Chief Thomas, do you want to say anything about the Citizens Police Academy? Because Councilman Thomason used to be the Chief of Police, and it's a great experience. If you haven't done it, you don't have to live in Jacks Beach to do it. I've done it. How many people here have done the Citizens Police Academy? And including the Atlantic Beach one, because Atlantic Beach has one now as well. It is a great experience. If you haven't done it, you should do it. You will really learn a lot about what our police department does, all the different departments, what they deal with, learn more about our community, the issues that our police department deals with in the community. And I would venture to say that you'll have a lot more respect for what they do. And then afterwards, you can actually join the Alumni Association and actually volunteer with the police department. And I know a lot of people who do that as well. So, and the police department can't thank people enough for what they can do as volunteers as well. So. We encourage you to consider it, so I have the information on the agenda here as well. And then because of Martin Luther King holiday, just want to remind everybody that Jacks Beach and Neptune Beach would normally be meeting on the 19th because they meet the third Monday, but both cities will be meeting on Tuesday the 20th, and so the information's on this agenda as well. So you don't go to City Hall on the 19th and find everything locked up. And then just to let you know, our next meeting is going to be Wednesday, February 4th, and that will be our annual State of the Beaches meeting, and we'll have all 3 beach mayors here, and they'll be talking about each of their cities where we've been and where we're going in 2015. They'll probably touch on some of the things that they are going to be focusing on in the 2015 legislative session, which is getting ready to kick off in Tallahassee. So anyway, do we have any other announcements that anyone would like to bring up before we introduce our guest? Okay, well then, I'd like to introduce Councilman Bill Gulliford. I think everybody knows him. There's a lot, I don't think I need to say a whole lot other than we're really glad to have you here tonight. And we'll let him tell us about Jacksonville. And
we don't have enough time. I'm going to use this because I normally can't stand for much more than about 30 minutes at my age, so I have to have something to lean on or prop myself up on. Before I get started, I just think that we ought to recognize Sandy Golding for what she's done with this organization. You know, one of the real failings that I see is a lack of education on the part of citizens and voters, and it's sad. So many times they rely on the media, and generally they get a very shallow version of what we or any other political body has done. And I think forums like this and organizations like this where you can come and hear what really might be happening in your communities and some of the problems, some of the opportunities, are a real benefit, a real value, and I wish there was more of that. And the fact that it's nonpartisan makes it even better. So I think that Sandy deserves an awful lot of credit for continuing to make this organization stronger and stronger over the years, and celebrating 11 years, that's quite an accomplishment, and certainly having a track record that the organization has done some incredibly good things for the community. That being said, I'm going to give you a little rundown, and then we'll, by the way, I talked to Mayor Pruitt today, or this afternoon. She's a little bit under the weather and had something else she had to do, but she sent her regrets. She's talking about activists. There's one that's a wind-up toy and just pointing in the direction to get out of her way. You know, my cell phone identifies her when it calls, and I always have that hesitation. Do I answer this or not? And then I get a voicemail, but no, I always answer it. But she's quite a character. Somebody speculated about all these people turned out because you're speaking tonight. I think it really must be a bad night for television, is the real truth of the matter. I'm going to run down and talk to you about, and this is in no particular order, tipping fees in Atlantic Beach and Neptune Beach, annexation in Atlantic Beach, Mayport Village and the Mayport CRA that you may not be aware of, Police Fire Pension Fund in Jacksonville, the new District 13, which will encompass the beaches, upcoming races, if we have time, Jacksonville races, and anything else you want to talk about. And so we've got about 53 minutes to get through all that, and Q&A at the very end. Quickly on the tipping fees, you know, there's always been this dissension ever since consolidation between Jacksonville and the beaches, and I participated when I was mayor of Atlantic Beach. We filed a legal action against the city of Jacksonville over double taxation, and it's been ongoing. As a result of that, there was an amendment to the 1982 interlocal agreement between the beaches Baldwin and the city of Jacksonville, and they were done individually, which it was after I had left office, and I always wondered about that. And in the interlocal agreement with Neptune Beach and Atlantic Beach, but not Jacksonville Beach, it said that if the city of Jacksonville ever reached a point where they were charging garbage fees for the garbage service, and it covered their cost, or at least up to, I think, 80% of their cost, that they would no longer provide free landfill services to those two beach communities. And so when I first was elected, that came to the forefront, and that was one of Mayor Payton's last acts, was to attempt to enforce that because they were imposing the fee. And there's been an ongoing battle. I got ambushed the first night of the budget, the first budget evening at 1:20 in the morning. I got ambushed by my fellow council members where it was slid back in to collect that from the beaches as a floor amendment, and we went down and I did get 7 other council members to vote with me, but it was defeated. I was trying to get it left out. But it's been ongoing back and forth, and in fact, Atlantic Beach has recently come up with what they deem to be a compromise, and I can tell you, I think that they're very, very fair. Atlantic Beach's position in this thing, the offering that they've made to Jacksonville has been extremely fair. Neptune Beach still has not reconciled their differences. I don't know if I was an Atlantic Beach commissioner that I would have voted for it, but I'm a cantankerous sort, so sometimes I don't, I might be too strong in one direction or another. But the regrettable thing is that here we are 3.5 years into the Brown administration, we still don't have a deal, at least for Atlantic Beach. This is one of the big problems we've got with so many things, including annexation. What they did with, for those of you that are not aware of what's going on in Atlantic Beach, you have a new development, the Atlantic Beach Country Club. In that area, years ago when George Bull was an influential individual in Atlantic Beach, he made certain that the golf course was not part of Atlantic Beach. It actually was in the city of Jacksonville. It still is in the city of Jacksonville. So now there are going to be a number of homes that are going to be built there. Jacksonville is supposed to provide the services, which we all know from past experience, because Atlantic Beach, when I was on the commission, annexed the north end of Atlantic Beach, then called Seminole Beach. And that was a lot about the services the people up there weren't getting, particularly police services. So the ideologically is that Atlantic Beach, because the access is going to be on from Submarine Drive, Atlantic Beach should be able to annex that. But Maria knows this. It's kind of been not in the forefront, but I know it too, that the city of Jacksonville or the Brown administration has sort of been holding that up until we got to a tipping fee agreement. Well, now we're at the tipping fee agreement, and God knows where the annexation issue is, because unfortunately we've lost the best person in the administration, Karen Bowling, who was the chief administrative officer and got things done, and I don't know where it's going to all end up. But this is part of the frustration for those of us that sit on the council and try and get things done in Jacksonville. The spin is that the mayor's doing a great job. There are a lot of people out there think he's doing a fine job. Reality is he's not doing anything. So therefore, you can't be indicted for doing something wrong. If you're not doing anything, you can't do anything wrong, can you? And believe it or not, there are a lot of people that believe that he's, and this is based on some real polling, the majority of people out there still think he's doing a pretty doggone good job. Well, I'm very close to it, and we have some additional issues with respect, you just heard, with respect to the beach, and I don't think he's been doing a very good job. And that's unfortunate, because what this city really needs is some vision, some action. We've got huge problems, but we've got even bigger opportunities. So I would hope that if he does get reelected, we can push him a little bit harder in the direction of leadership, which has not been one of his great talents or skills thus far. Mayport CRA. Everybody know what a CRA is? It's a community redevelopment area, and what state statute allows you to do is come up with a designated area. It has to meet certain requirements in order to be determined as a community redevelopment area, and there's some things like blight that have to be part of it, and that's not necessarily in the state's definition. It's not necessarily a negative thing. But you go through these steps once you have passed that legislation, and you go through these steps, and one of which is you have to hire a consultant that's schooled in this, and they initiate two committees. There's a technical advisory committee and there's a citizens committee, and they help give direction to how this is redeveloped. The basis, the real benefit to it is that once you've locked in the CRA, you then use additional tax revenue that's collected from redevelopment to plow it back into the redevelopment. In other words, whatever that total tax revenue base is at the time you initiate the CRA, then anything above that that's collected over the next umpteen years is used strictly to plow it back into the redevelopment area. And Jacksonville Beach downtown would be a good example of that type of thing. So we've gotten, while my colleagues turned down the $25,000 I asked for fireworks for Jacksonville Beach, they didn't turn down the $200,000 we needed to get a CRA going. And fortunately, we're on board. There are people, and as a matter of fact, show of hands, who in the room is on either one of those Mayport CRA committees? Maria is, Sandy is, Val, where are you?
Val's in the back.
Why didn't you raise your hand, Val?
That's
That's right, that's okay. I know what the deal is. Well, Val Boswick is on one of the committees too. And so they will give direction. Already they've met, and originally the intent was to define the area as basically Mayport Village. Now they've decided to expand it. It will come all the way down to the City of Atlantic Beach border, to the northern border on Mayport Road, and it's going to jump the river into several of the islands on the other side of Heckscher Drive. And I think that's a good thing. The idea there is we pick up more tax base by doing that. Now, think with me for a minute about Mayport. You know, Mayport is a treasure, folks. Mayport is something that is languished, much like Jacksonville Beach's downtown used to languish. And it could be a fantastic place. It could be a true destination. When I was a kid growing up, one of the exciting things living out here at the beach was to have your parents say, come on, we're going to take you to Strickland's, or we're going to take you to Parsons. And where were they? They were out in Mayport. And that's where we went. And that was a big deal. And now it's gone into decline, and you know all the rest of the story about Mayport. We've got an opportunity to turn it around, not only from a standpoint of real estate development, because I can envision shops and even maybe a little boutique hotel and more restaurants than Safe Harbor and Singleton's, but in addition to that, a working waterfront where we go back to commercial fishing, because that's an economic driver, believe it or not. That's big business. So I think that I think we're well on our way. I would suspect that the members of the committee here would agree that it is a fantastic opportunity for the area, and I think that we will all benefit long term. I'd like to see us actually secure some of the other properties up there that mean so much. The King House is fantastic. I think all of you know about that. Of course, it's haunted. We could have people stay. We could allow people to stay there at night if they were courageous enough for $100 a night. But the whole history of Mayport, for those of you that don't know it, Mayport was founded 3 years prior to St. Augustine. And St. Augustine claims 1565 they were the first city in the United States, continental United States, but actually St. Augustine predated them by 3 years. So it's got some history to it. And I think that we just need to get out there and sell it. Port Authority owns the bulk of the riverfront land. We have a little bit of a problem there, but I think it will be outweighed by the opportunity and some ideas of how we can get them involved in being part of the development of that waterfront property. But it's a fantastic asset for the community. It's a fantastic asset for the beaches. I can envision a boutique hotel on the river with people being able to sit out on the deck in the morning and drink their coffee and watch the ships go by. I mean, could you find anything any better than that? So, that being said, let me talk to you about Police and Fire Pension Fund. And I'll try and be brief and succinct. We thought we had a deal. We got the deal from the mayor after supposedly they had negotiated this last deal. And there were a number of problems with it. I think I offered 6 or 7 amendments to it. All my amendments save one passed, and were part of the deal that we proposed or sent to the board. As you read in the paper, the board accepted everything except three things. One was the term. We said 3 years on the term. They said 10 years. The COLA, we tied to Social Security, the actual Social Security COLA each year, and put a cap at 4%. They wanted to go to 6%. That doesn't give me a whole lot of heartburn because you're still talking about the real number. And if you look at the last 15 or so years, there's been several years, 3 or 4 years where it was 0. So never did it get anything close to 4 during that time period. So that didn't give me a lot of problem. But then they also, this guarantee, currently right now, people that have their money in the drop program get guaranteed 8.4%, totally unrealistic. What we came up with, we're going to pay you the actual rate of return that we get in the plan. And I added in the amendment less administrative or the net gain, not the gross, less administrative cost. And we changed it from 5 to 10% to 0 to 10%. As far as a range, we wouldn't pay, we wouldn't have them participate if we did have a loss, but if we had a substantial gain beyond 10%, which we've had the last couple of years, they'd be capped at 10%. And the board came back and said, no, we want it to be 5 on the bottom and 14.6% on the top, or something like that. So it's back in the hands of the council. Let me explain our biggest impediment, folks. And this is one, I'm not the shiniest penny on the pile. I am not a financial wizard, and there's a lot of things in life I still don't understand. But this has probably been the most convoluted, complicated issue I've ever been involved in my life, because we had this 30-year agreement that has hogtied us so badly. Everybody says, just fix it. Well, I would love to just fix it. I mean, there are 2 lawsuits pending on this 30-year agreement. Many of us believe that it's absolutely illegal based on statutory law. Statute says 3 years max and on agreements. But because our plan predated Chapter 175 and 185, then there's a contention that maybe that allows them to enter into this 30-year agreement, and it's binding and it's legal. I think most of the really smart legal folks in this town do not believe that it's legal. But to get to the point where it's declared illegal, you got to go through all this court process, and they continue to throw up every roadblock that they can to delay. So that's the big impediment. What can we do now? Well, I think there's a move afoot to try and get a declaratory action or judgment on the 30-year agreement and really move aggressively. There was another piece of legislation Councilman and I introduced that said we want to put it before the voters. Right now, the board itself is appointed. 2 of them are appointed by the city council. 1 is selected by the firefighters. 1 is selected by the police officers, and then those 4 are selected 5th. What we wanted to do was we want the city to select the 5th. But what this legislation did was to put it out to the voters and say, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to be able to select that 5th? We withheld it because of the negotiations that were going on. You may see that pop back up in the next week or 2, because we're sort of at a standstill. The last thing that you may not be aware of is impasse. And I think that's probably going to be the salvation. That is, provided that 10 people on the council are courageous enough to do the right thing. And what impasse allowed under statutory law again is that when both sides get to the point where they have declared impasse, you go to mediation. They bring in a magistrate, or that's not the right word, but mediator, or you know what I'm talking about. And if it still can't be resolved, then it goes back to the council. The council then acts as a quasi-judicial body, no longer a council, but more of a body of judges. And then they can listen to the evidence and impose whatever they deem to be appropriate as far as benefits, etc. So that may well be where it goes. I'm surprised that the other side is not recognizing that that's the next option, because I just was hoping that they'd go ahead and accept the deal that we put in front of them. It does have a long-term consequence. Let me give you some numbers where we are right now. This might be entertaining. I asked the city auditor to give me a spreadsheet showing a police officer that works for the city of Jacksonville for 30 years and then retires, no promotion. You could call this officer the bottom rung officer. Do the same thing with a firefighter, no promotion. At the end of 30 years of service in the city, what would they be getting in the way of a retirement benefit? For a firefighter, after 30 years of service, he'd get $40,500 and some dollars. For a police officer, he'd get $45,000 some. Both numbers subject to COLA increases each year, I might add, currently at 3%. But the other thing you got to remember is that they may have started when they were age 20 or 21. They may be retiring at age 50 or 51. What are they probably going to do? Doggone right, they're going to get another job. They're going to get Social Security too. So, listen, they deserve extra consideration. I understand that. They risk their lives. They're out there in some really horrible circumstances. Councilman Thomason, from his experience, can tell you that. And I had firsthand experience with our police officers in Atlantic Beach. It's a really rugged job. But, folks, you've heard the numbers, you've seen the numbers. It's not sustainable. We can't keep it up. We've got to come up with a solution. And as I've tried to tell the rank and file, but they don't want to listen to this, the other problem we've got is if we continue to increase our contribution, that leaves less money from the general fund to give them raises or attract new employees with higher wages to be competitive with other areas. And so we're really in a box here, and they're impacted in a way also, as well as a taxpayer. It's it's our primary focus right now. It's the gorilla in the room. It's the thing we've really got to resolve. And I can just assure you that there are council members that are very committed to get that done, myself included. So if somebody's got specific questions about it when we get to that, I'll be glad to try and answer them for you. The new District 13. For those of you that don't know, District 13, which I represent, starts in Atlantic Beach. It goes down through Neptune Beach, Jacksonville Beach, jumps the Intercoastal Waterway, runs on the south side of J. Turner Butler, goes to Southside Boulevard, runs down Southside Boulevard, taking in Deerwood, Deer Creek, takes a little jog out on part of Bay Meadows, comes back to US 1, or Southside Boulevard, runs down to US 1, and goes down the east side of US 1 through Bayard all the way to the county line. Pretty well laid out district, isn't it? One of the first things we did when I got elected, we created a coalition. There's some friction usually when we get to redistricting, particularly on the north side of the river. There's some infighting and jockeying, and we recognized that we didn't want to be a part of that, and we figured that the best thing we could do collectively was to get together as south and east side council members, and let's draw our districts up and try and make them compact and reasonable and do it right. And so consequently, the new District 13 is Mayport finally, which has never been a part of District 13, and all of the beach island, along with a small portion on the west side of the Intercoastal Waterway running down about from Alamacani, bounded on the waterway by one side and San Pablo by the other, running all the way down to J. Turner Butler. And then there's that condominium and little development south of there is also in District 13. So it's a pretty compact district. I would suggest to you that this is the way it should be, and it will be that way for a number of years to come. And that's beneficial to the beaches community, I do believe now. Because we've got commonality, we've got common interests. Mayport, I've gotten very involved in Mayport, even though it's not been in my district. The district councilman, Holt, his district currently runs from Mayport all the way over to Argyle on the west side, just north of Lake County. That's his district. It's like a big giant crescent. So that's what I'm talking about. So we've got that pretty well straightened out. There's some upcoming council races, and of course you know we've got a mayoral race. And I would encourage you to take a look. You do have a vote. You have a vote. If I draw opposition, and I haven't as of yet, qualifying ends January 16th. So if any of you have that aspiration to jump in, now's the chance. Actually, if I don't draw opposition, I'm going to have a heck of a lot of fun. Because I've got a good bit of money in my campaign account, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to give it to a lot of beaches charities. Several of them are in this room. Curtis knows about it, and Sandy knows about it, and several others. I've been building this list, and there's some very worthwhile charities at the beach, and I will look forward to being able to maybe spread $40,000 or $50,000 amongst those charities, and I think it's certainly sorely needed. You all know the situation. Just recently, I think he announced, you might have found today, some of you may know Aaron Bowman. He was a former captain at Mayport. Aaron has jumped into the race on District 3, which is just on the other side of the Intercoastal Waterway, fundamentally Richard Clark's old district. So we have only, I guess there are 3 council races right now that where people don't have opposition. One of them is the new District 11, which takes in a lot of that area that I used to represent, or will no longer represent, down in Deerwood, Deer Creek, that whole southeastern part of the county, along with some of Mandarin and some of that Bartram Springs area. And a fellow named Danny Beckton is running for that. You may remember that he was my townie opponent in the District 13 race last time, and he's running for it, and thus far is unopposed. Lori Boyer had opposition, but he dropped out. She's running for re-election in District 5. And then countywide races or citywide races, each one of you can vote. There are 5 of them. all of them are races that have multiple candidates in them. And I encourage you, I would hope maybe Sandy can get some of those candidates out here to speak, and I would hope that you would, because really you have to remember that the count on some issues, just like fireworks for Jacksonville Beach, is 18-1. I can get very lonely up there, although they sometimes don't want to rattle me, so they'll go along with me on some things. But it's important to all of us at the beach that we make the at-large council members know without any question that they represent us to the beach. And many times I need support of those at-large council people on beach issues. John Crescent has, there are geographical areas that they have to live in. They run countywide, but it's divided into 5 areas, 5 at-large districts. John represents this one. He has opposition, a fellow named Dave Barron. And Mr. Barron's raised a lot of money. But I can tell you, John Crescent would be a tough one to run against, no matter how much money you raise, because the fellow has done a good job representing the citizens in the community. He really has, so that'll be an interesting race. Ms. Daniels has opposition from a young lady named Anna Roche, and she's a CPA by trade and been engaged in a lot of civic activities and has raised something like $120,000, $130,000. She's got very, very strong support throughout the community, so that probably is going to be a pretty strong race. There's a gal named Michelle Taccone who's running for the seat currently occupied by Robin Lum, and Jacoby Pittman, who runs Clara White, is her primary opposition. And Greg Anderson does have opposition. Greg's been a friend of the beach, but he does not have strong opposition right now. And then the perennial politician in all of Duval County has decided to run for city council. He's been state legislator, school board member, mayor, and now he wants to try the council, Tommy Missouri. And Tommy is running against the guy, I guess there's several in that race, but one that's most formidable, at least in the way of raising money, is Jeff Youngblood. And that's pretty much it on the races at large. I don't have anything else we'll just open it up to questions. You got any questions? Patrick?
Bill, thanks. Recognizing the fact that we all have our own police departments, but also recognizing the fact that the jail's downtown and we often need help from JSO, do you have any thoughts on the sheriff's race?
Yeah, there are 5 strong candidates in it, Patrick. I'm certainly not going to, I've avoided endorsing anybody. Let me tell y'all, this is about bearing your soul. I had some folks come to me about running for mayor, and this was about 5-6 months ago. Preston Haskell, the Davis family, a number of others. And I was very much honored and humbled by that. And I said to him, I said, look, before we go spend a lot of money, let's set up a PC, a political committee, and let's get some professional polling in here and see. Because you can sit up there and you can have people blowing in your ear and telling you how important you are, and that represents about 1/10% of the population. The rest of them don't know who the heck you are. And so I wanted to see, what kind of chance do you have? He came back with we got a guy named Dave Sackett out of D.C. to do polling, and I'm getting to the sheriff's race on this one, in a round circuitous way. And it came back, and really it would have been a tough battle. And what ultimately the deciding factor for me was that if I got reelected, and I didn't run for mayor, if I ran for mayor, this guy won and I was beaten, I'm very much concerned about the next 4 years. And I felt like that we needed some people coming back on the council that had some experience, because remember, you probably are aware of it now, you all are going to, or the community is going to elect at least 10 new council members. And when you walk up there, believe it or not, and I got caught today in the committee meeting not knowing about some legislation that we passed, you're inundated. And when you walk in there with no experience whatsoever, it takes a year or two to get any kind of speed on what you're doing and what they're talking about even. So I had the advantage of having been in a local government here, which is a big advantage because procedurally and a lot of things are the same, it's just bigger. That was why I went. But when we did the polling, I said, just for the fun of it, let's look at the sheriff's race, see how that thing's tracking. And what it showed at that time, and this is 3 or 4 months ago, was that there were 3 candidates, and you can pretty well figure who they are, that were very, very close. But then there was a 4th candidate who was a dark horse named Jefferson, who was in that mix because of the solidarity of the African American community. And what the poll was saying is that the runoff was going to be between Jefferson and one of the other 3. Since then, there's been another African American who's jumped in the race, and 2 or 3 more people that have jumped in the race. I don't know why. So that might be skewed. I will say this much. I think that's probably, in some ways, more important than the mayor's race. Because what I've also found out, if you'd asked me before I got elected, do you think we should have an appointed sheriff or an elected sheriff? I said, I think we ought to stay where we are and have an elected sheriff. The problem with an elected sheriff is that he controls the largest segment of the budget. And he has the ability, we have no line item control over his budget, nor does the mayor. And he can really play politics with it. First thing out of his mouth, if we've got the numbers, is, well, I'm going to have to lay off police officers. We're going to have to, and that's pretty strong with the public. They don't like to hear those kinds of things. They get really upset. It may or may not be the case. Maybe a good administrator doesn't have to lay off police officers. They can cut other places or other ways. But politically, that's a pretty nice trump card to have. So I don't know right now who I would vote for sheriff, because there are some very good candidates. I just hope we get a really, really good one, because I think that's critical, very, very critical. Part of our problem, though, right now is that the sheriff and the mayor don't work together. And in past years, a lot of the problems that you have with the political side of it has been overcome by the fact that the mayor and the sheriff generally will sit down and talk and work together. Do you know, the time I was council president, the mayor and I had 2 meetings. And one meeting, I never got a word in. He was pontificating and telling me about all this stuff. And so he's not easy to work with because he doesn't think that we're equals. He thinks that we're down there and he's up here. Tell you a quick funny story. I got quoted on TV. I think I was slamming him a little bit or something. I don't know, something was going on. Anyway, we had a Beaches Habitat board meeting, and it's about 6:20 in the evening, and we were sort of finishing up. And every time we finish up a Beaches Habitat board meeting, we go around the table with joys and concerns. Each one of us give our joy and concern. And I noticed my phone went off about 10 minutes before that and said, Alvin Brown. I thought, I'm not going to take this right now. So when they got to me on the joys and concern, I said, well, my joy is that the mayor called me. My concern is he just saw the 6 o'clock news. You know what? He didn't see it, but somebody who did see it called him from D.C., and he called me back to talk about the 6 o'clock news in the commentary. So, yeah, I think it's important. Scott?
Bill, getting back to the pension, what is your thoughts, or what effect is it going to have? I understand that Janet Atkins wrote a letter to the governor asking the governor's office to investigate the pension fund and board. Where do you think that's going? And
I think there are legitimate concerns over there.
What do you think he's? I mean, he hasn't said.
I haven't heard, but I think there should be a forensic audit of it. I think it'll scare some people what it might turn up. And we have in all earnest. We have an executive director that has manipulated that thing something awful for the last umpteen years. He has paid the average of the 3 CEOs of the independent authorities' salary, which puts him up in the $300,000 plus range. Now, why you get there as the executive director of a police and fire pension fund, I don't know. But one of the things I looked at early on was how do we compare? How did our police and fire pension fund compare with other jurisdictions, especially larger jurisdictions, in both administrative costs and return on investments over a 10-year or so span. And I can tell you, we look real bad. They can say what they want about the decline in the market, which is true, but that impacted everybody. But the only real measure is is comparative measure, as far as I'm concerned. How did you do it compared to everybody else? And I think, you may not be aware of this, but that board opted to spend over $300,000 fighting a public records request by this guy, Curtis Lee. Now why? And they're still appealing it. So it's not stopped at $300,000. They've taken it to the Supreme Court. For what reason? You might say, well, that's coming out of the police and fire pension fund. No, it's coming out of your pocket. It's not coming out of their fund. That fund is funded by you all, you and I. So I think that there's genuine cause for concern there. They gave him a senior whatever pension that we didn't know anything about for a couple of years, that our general counsel said is illegal, but they defied us and said, we don't think it's illegal, we're going to give it to him. Fully funded, yes, sir, Curtis.
Hey, good evening, Bill. Thanks. We're discussing the CRA, Mayport CRA, and it has to be 5 years ago now when there were some real efforts with the A1A corridor. Do you have any updates on what's going on?
They're working on getting the designation, same designation St. Johns County has for the A1A corridor. I know Elaine Brown's been involved in that. Take it all the way from Nassau County down through Mayport down through Jacksonville Beach. And you may have noticed when you go into Ponte Vedra, when you cross the St. Johns County line, there's that designation, A1A designation. We will have the same thing. They've been working diligently on that for the last 6-8 months.
That has no tie into the CRA? Or
No. That's a designation by the state, and there's some other benefits to it. I can't tell you specifically all of it, but it will be beneficial for us to do that. And we have a green, this will be part of the greenway too, using the ferry. And folks, because of people like you, we kept the ferry, and that was great. I can tell you, when we had that first meeting at Fletcher, when it looked like that the ferry was going to be shut down, I was really concerned about whether or not we could pull it off, because again, there wasn't that much sympathy in Jacksonville, and especially on the council, to put in a lot of dollars to save the ferry. It wasn't a strong priority for a lot of my fellow council members, but fortunately, John Cressenbenny got behind it, and he's really great, and of course, Elaine Brown was super, and a whole multitude of other people, a number of them in this room, that really said, let's make it an issue and let's keep the thing. And in the long run, it will be an important component of Mayport Village and the development of Mayport Village as a destination. So.
I want to follow up on that one. I know Maria and Cindy don't live in Mayport. Are there any Mayport people?
Oh, yes. Matter of fact, I've got a list of them in case you wanted to see it. You may be familiar with Mayport Waterfront Partnership. There are 4 or 5 people in the partnership that are in the partnership. Mickey Baldwin. Mickey knows more about Mayport than anybody other than maybe Sandra Tuttle. So Mickey's involved on one of the committees. Yes, we have a great cross-section of Mayport.
So they're in.
Oh, yes. I think Val will tell you that we very much wanted them engaged. But I think the spillover is important because, and having more people from the beaches, because now it's going to have a bigger impact. In fact, Maria and I have talked about it, and they've even talked about it as a commission, that they may develop a CRA for the rest of Mayport Road going all the way down to Atlantic Boulevard and work in conjunction with the CRA that we're developing. And I think that could be a very beneficial thing, a good thing for the community as a whole. Because it's a community asset. It's not just Mayport Village, it's community. So, yes, sir, Tim.
Councilman, you've been an incredible advocate for the library system for years and years and years, especially this library out here. And thank you for that. It really has meant a lot to all of us. 2 questions. Can you give us a sense of the council's opinion on the value and the importance of the library system from a funding standpoint? And the second question, follow-up, what can we do as a community to make it more aware to you all how important it is to us?
I don't think that the importance is lost on the council. I think the problem you have with the council is that we run out of money. Do you realize that this council is probably the first, maybe the first council ever that authorized absolutely no borrowing? And one of our problems right now is, I got the council auditor to do a graph for me, and it was pretty intriguing. I said, give me a line graph on the top showing the millage rate each year over the last 15 years, and do a bar graph on total city debt. And I said, you know, I'd like to be able to look at that as one sheet, and he did that. And isn't it intriguing that when we were pandering to the voters and to the citizens by saying, look at us, we're rolling back your taxes, what we were doing instead was to offset the lost revenues, we were borrowing money. And we continue to do that for some time. So consequently, now we're in a position where we're not only having to fund typical services that cities and counties provide, but we've got an inordinate amount of debt service that we're facing. And so when people talk to you about, I don't raise taxes or let's roll taxes back, understand that debt is a hidden tax. And it's a worse tax than raising taxes sometimes. Because when you pay it back, you're not just paying back the principal, you're paying back the interest too. And so the real difficulty we've got, Tim, is the appetite. One of the reasons Brown is very popular still in the polling is this position he's taken, no new taxes. You know, we raised taxes, we raised ad valorem taxes 14% because we had a gun to our head, we had no option. Do you think we could do that repeatedly year after year after year? Not avoid being lynched or something. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation, that we're all political animals up there and yield to the whim and the will of the people, and the people don't want to raise taxes. I don't want to have my taxes raised either. It's no different. We get our taxes raised anyway just because of the appreciation of our property if it's appreciated. So, you know, I understand that part of it. I think it speaks to the fact that there are certain things in the library may well be included in that we're going to have to find other funding sources. I think that's going to be one of my tasks over the next year, is to see what else is available. For instance, Miami has a tax that they charge on food and beverage. This is allowed by state statute. They exclude the mom and pops. In other words, it's a certain size establishment from there up that charges this. Is that a source for some things like libraries? I don't know, but I do know this: when we get under intense pressure and you start fiscal pressure and you start prioritizing, then libraries, when you start comparing it to some of the other things, it falls down the list. And that's the difficulty. It's not that we don't think they're important. It's just in that fight for money, that's an easier one than other things. Yes, sir.
Councilman, how do you feel we can afford dredging, considering all the money issues you just reviewed?
I don't know where that money would come from, frankly. I mean, I've heard both sides of the debate. I know that the chamber is in it strong, and I've still got some reservations. But I mean, I know that there's environmental considerations and concerns, and I appreciate that. And I think those are significant. I think there's an economic question here. I got something from my son, who's the managing director or whatever of C.B. Richard Ellis here, that was assessing port performance recently. And it was disturbing to me to see that Jacksonville didn't even hit the top 20. And that while you were seeing trends in these other ports that were upwards, the statistics that I'm getting from the Port Authority quarterly has not been showing that kind of tracking. So I asked the port director this question. I said, in the old sales models, you always, when you expanded, you always looked at who are you going to take the business away from? And I said, who are we going to take the business away from with this port expansion or this port deepening? And he couldn't answer that, but he said, yeah, but it's not just that issue, it's an issue of losing what we already have. Okay, maybe that's a valid point, I don't know, but is it worth $1 billion? Or is it worth what the city will have to invest? I don't know. I'm not a guru. I'm very worried about making a decision that has not only the concerns locally, but the fact that it can be impacted by things that we have absolutely no control over. Long Beach and the railroads are not going to concede to the eastern ports. I've read some things about that. You know, they think that they can still ship cheaper to the East Coast by unloading in the Port of Los Angeles and shipping across country than we can with the post-Panamax ships going through the Panama Canal, which I might add is going to charge somewhere in the way of $1 million per transit. I don't know. I mean, it's a very difficult decision. Very, very difficult decision. I'm just sitting there listening and trying to learn as much as I can and watch this evolve. I don't have a good answer, but I think it's a significant concern, consideration. It needs to get lots of debate. Yes, sir.
Oh, going back to the port, given what you know now, would you support expansion of the port?
I don't know enough yet. There's some questions I have that haven't been answered, and that's why I'd be hesitant to say that I would or wouldn't right this very moment. I'm still listening and I'm still learning. But I will say this much, as you might have gathered from my comments, I'm concerned. I'm not an immediate yes vote. I'm all in. And I look, my position is just like I respect the people that are all in for the thing. They're trying to do something good for the city. We're all trying to weigh that decision. What's the best thing for the city? But I have concerns still about it. And there have been some points made from an economic standpoint that are very valid concerns and considerations. I will say.
Well, the port did not buy all that property at Mayport to let it sit there. And if they expand that port, they're surely planning to use it, but it will not be used.
No, you know the big problem with that their stupid cruise ship terminal idea? You know what the one thing they didn't factor into that? There's no media in the room other than Tom. Is there? Tom, in the meeting, go outside right now. Put your pen down, put it on that table right this very minute. Off the record. The Port Authority paid, well, this is all public record, the Port Authority paid $12 million for that property in multiple acquisitions. What do you think it's worth now? There was an appraisal, I think, less than a year ago, and it came in under 4. Well, somebody said it earlier before the meeting started, they got caught on the high end, everything was going great. There were private investors that made, myself included, made some really stupid mistakes back when everything was wonderful and we thought it would never end. So I can't fault them, but that's the reality of their situation. Now, if you went in and offered them 6 tomorrow, and they have 12 invested, do you think they'll take their deal? I don't think they'll take their deal because she's going to write a story about it. She's going to say they're losing $6 million worth of taxpayer money. The only way we can get them out of that, and this all ties into Mayport, I think, is probably going to be looking at some long-term land leases which will get them out from underneath that problem, and they're very important to the development of Mayport. But going back to the cruise terminal deal, you know the one expense they had to factor into the cost of the cruise terminal, which was $60 million for the terminal? They didn't factor in the cost of dredging. What do you think it would cost to dredge for a cruise ship right up where that terminal is located? Have you ever looked over the edge along the river? How deep do you think it is? No, you don't want to dive in head first, do you? Voila! So it was an ill-conceived plan from the very beginning, and even worse if you start looking at the infrastructure side of it, the services. Oh, sure, when the people drove out there to get on the cruise ship, the fact that we have a 2-lane road running out there wouldn't be that big a deal, but what about when it let out?
Yeah. Or when it's underwater. Where do they
Yeah, or when it's underwater, yeah. So that was a different time and a different group. We have a new leadership down there, so hopefully they'll be a little more sensible about that. We'll see what we can do. Yes, ma'am.
We just moved here from Miami, and I like what you said, and there's so many other situations, but I saw something in the paper the other day about the FDOT going to put tolls on 295, and I love traffic up here. Let me tell you, there's no traffic. It's so wonderful compared to Miami. But down there, what they've done,
Everything's relative, isn't it?
everything's relative. What they've done down there with what they call MDX, which is what controls the expansion of the roads and betterment of the transportation is what they're saying. People are paying a lot of money now in tolls. And I lived up here when we had tolls on Main Street Bridge 40 years ago. and I know you got rid of them, and I kept telling them, and that's why we moved up here? No. But seriously, I don't want to see tolls.
Well,
up here
these,
at all.
let me explain express lanes. It's a little bit different. It's not truly a toll. It's an additional, it's lane addition, and it's strictly voluntary. If you want to pay to drive on that lane,
Well, we have that at 95 as well. We
right.
do.
And the advantage may be that if enough people do it, then that frees up the non-toll lanes or the
I just
non-express
want to
lanes.
make sure that
We're not putting any tolls. I'm glad you bring that up.
Councilman,
Here's-
you're not going to let any other tolls start,
No,
showing up.
but you bring up an interesting point that I want to share as to our financial position, and this is something you need to be cognizant of as voters and citizens. You know, a lot of times, just like what we've inherited, we walked in and we've inherited the actions of a prior council maybe 10 years ago.
That's why you have pensions the way
Or the
you
pension stuff, exactly right. What you don't see in this whole process, let me give you a good example. Over the past 4 or 5 years, we have spent, on average, $10 to $12 million resurfacing roads in the city of Jacksonville. Do you know how much money we put in the budget this year? About $2 million. Do you know how much money the professionals say we really should be spending on resurfacing roads in Jacksonville? About $20 million. See, at some point, if we don't address things like that, which are hidden from you all generally, you don't get involved in those kinds of considerations, probably don't care until your roads go down the tubes. Those are the kind of things that we're trying to clean up. We've got a CIP committee that met today, that's chaired by Lori Warrior, who's a great asset to this community, I might add. But we're doing things like that that haven't been done for years. We're trying to make the city fiscally responsible again. And so you may not think that we're doing much down there, but honestly, there's things happening that will, long term, long after I'm gone and others are gone, will be a benefit to the community as a whole.
And a follow-up on that, because Miami has some kind of Better Miami kind of thing every 30 years. They set out bonds, and do you do that up here too?
Better Jacksonville is what it was called. And it gets mixed reviews. You know, sometimes when you get a whole, and we really have not met all the obligations. And that's another problem that we have in the financial side of our city is that we anticipated a stronger sales tax revenue or projected a stronger sales tax revenue than was reality, and as a consequence, the general fund had to subsidize part of the cost of the Better Jacksonville plan. And that draws money from some of the other things like libraries that you should be doing. The good news is that even though we've been upside down for all these years, in about 1.5 years, we're going to go positive. And so we're going to be able to get that under control, hopefully. But I think that's the example of maybe we got too much money too fast and didn't spend it completely prudently. And there were some good projects. There's some that the citizens still question, like the courthouse. We won't go there. Okay, what else? Yes, sir.
Not to beat a dead horse on this pension thing, but it seems to me that the 3-year contract has been the elephant in the room for many years. And I wonder what could be done to accelerate the resolution of that issue.
Well, we're in the courts. Unfortunately, it ultimately gets decided in the courts. But the 3 years is established by state statute. And my question is, why are they any different? Why are our bargaining units any different than all the other jurisdictions that fall under the 3-year provision around the state of Florida? That's the reality of it.
So the follow-up question there is, if the mediation does not enforce the 3-year rule, has anybody from the city attorney's office done any investigation
Oh,
of
yeah,
what might happen if they get sued by private citizens?
There's a legal action pending right now where the city of Jacksonville is a defendant on the 30-year agreement that was brought about by the Concerned Taxpayers Group. And so that's pending right now. There could be a ruling coming forward fairly quickly. And I would hope that it might be the case, but that's just one of several actions that are pending relative to the 30-year agreement. Probably the best thing, and that's why I'm disappointed that we didn't get a deal, the best thing that could happen would be, let's just get this thing behind us and move on and solve the problem as best we can and get on with it, but we haven't gotten there yet. We're trying. Jay, Councilman.
Bill, when you were the council president, you put together a group of citizens, various committees, to look at how the city was operated, which I thought was a fantastic idea. I had an opportunity to speak to several people who were on those committees. And I know they made a tremendous number of recommendations.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they weren't finished until about the time you stepped off of your year as council president. Have any of those recommendations moved forward?
3 of them have been introduced, co-sponsored by Lori and myself as legislation. Lori and I have met 5 or 6 times. It's our commitment that we're going to go through there, and we will, what needs to be affected by legislation, we'll introduce the legislation. What needs to be advanced by referendum or as J bills or whatever, we will do whatever we can to initiate that also. Because the worst thing we could do would be to have all of those citizens that spent all of those months putting together great recommendations, have their recommendations languish in another study on the shelf. And so we've made the personal commitment, both Lori and I, that we will make sure that we get that done. But thanks for bringing that up. I think it was a great process.
The charter revision?
No, charter revisions every 10 years. This was something that I came up with the idea of creating a task force on consolidated government. We were 40 years old and nobody had looked at how good we were or how bad we were, what worked, what didn't work. So I think there were 5 members of the 30-member committee from the beach. And I know Georgette was on the committee, for instance, and they spent 10 months going through every facet of consolidated government. It came back with a recommendation. Anybody that wants it, just let me know after the meeting, and I can get you a copy. It's about this thick, the recommendations that they developed, and they're very, very good in all areas of government, consolidated government. All right, we all have been great. It's 8 o'clock. I can't stand here any longer, so I've got to sit down. Thank you very much.
Always very good. So real quick, to answer some things that Bill brought up, we are going to have candidate forums. We've had candidate forums in the past, and again, we'll have a candidate forum for the at-large candidates because those are important to us here at the beach. We are working on right now written questions and answers. Well, questions, I guess I should say, to give the at-large candidates so we can post their answers on our website so you can see. And basically, a lot of the questions are beach-related questions, and we hope that helps those candidates get educated on the beach's issues. And then you guys will be able to see their responses online. But then we'll also have a public forum for the at-large candidates, and then also for the mayor candidates as well. They will get the questions as well. So we don't have those dates set, but when we do, we will be emailing those out in our newsletter. So if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, you can give us your email address at the table here, and we can put you on our newsletter. And we'll also post it on our website. Remember that our next meeting is Wednesday, February 4th. That will be our beaches, our State of the Beaches meeting with the 3 beaches mayors. Will be a really good meeting, and so we hope you'll plan to come at 7 o'clock in this room. And we hope you have a wonderful evening, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.